What's up, everybody? Thanks as always for supporting the show. It would mean a lot to me if you would take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel, and then follow me on social media on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter so you guys don't miss any of our content over the course of this season. All right, let's talk some basketball. All right, moving on to my number 2 championship contender, the Boston Celtics. Logan, are you higher or lower on the Boston Celtics than you were to start the season?
I can't believe I'm saying this because my expectations were so high for the Boston Celtics coming into this year. I'm higher on them. This Celtics team is historically great. Just 31 teams since 2000 have notched 32 wins in their first 41 games. 10 of those teams won the title, an additional 3 made the NBA Finals. So the track record is good. And it's just such an absurdly talented collection of players. Tatum, JB, Porzingis, Holiday, D. White, Horford shooting the hell out of the ball. He's over 40% this year, and they gel really well together. An interesting stat that I found about this team, against the Spurs, the Celtics became the second only team in NBA history to make at least 11 more three-pointers than their opponent in 3 consecutive games. The only other team to do that is the 2016 Warriors, and I just think that speaks to how Boston can just boat race teams. They can just shoot you out of games, and it's a double-edged sword because the one part of me says come playoff time, they can just blow out teams game to game. If they get hot, there's so many shooters down this roster that they can just shoot you out. But I also think there's a really heavy reliance on the 3 ball that scares me, that when they need shot variance in the playoffs and they need to vary up that shot selection, can they do it? I'm higher on them because I've been so impressed at the talent. I've been so impressed at the defense and the shooting ceiling. I'm still a little scared about the Celtics in big moments, in grimy games, in those rock fights that we see. Can they get it done? That being said, I am higher on them. This is a historically great start to this regular season.
I'm higher on the Celtics too. I think that they have separated from the Bucks in terms of my Eastern Conference contenders, and so that's kind of the standard that I'm holding them to when I'm looking at how I feel relative to preseason expectations. And this is one of the most overwhelmingly talented basketball teams at the top of the roster that we've seen. And especially in terms of the 3rd through 5th guys, to have legitimate all-star level players in terms of impact with Jrue and KP and Derek White, dudes who just make so many winning plays in their respective ways to complement your 2 big-time shot creators and shot makers on the wings. It's just really ideal modern basketball construction. I loved the KP edition. I thought some people undersold that he was legitimately coming off of a career year in Washington, and I understand that people didn't really value it that much in that situation, but he was defending at the highest level we'd seen. He was doing the most effective mismatch attacking and bullying out of the post that we'd ever seen, and that stuff has really translated. He adds a new dimension to this offense to me in terms of having that reliable guy who can finish around the rim on the interior, who can just brutalize mismatches out of the post, where he has been mind-bendingly efficient, and overall just break that reliance on the 3 ball that Logan's talking about a bit, where you're not just necessarily settling for pull-up 3 after pull-up 3 or one pass catch-and-shoot threes. As we've seen, that's when things can go a little bit south for Boston. Even though they are a great shooting team, they can get off there, and then that's when the lulls can start to develop. And he's been an awesome interior defender, like one of the most effective rim protectors in the league. Derek White was awesome post-All-Star break. He's been even better this year. And when you look at crunch time offense, where the Celtics process has always been a bit of a concern, Tatum and Jaylen breaking down a bit as playmakers, turning the ball over too much, settling for tough shots, he's a guy you can lean on. In fact, it's a small sample size with all clutch stats in a regular season, but the Celtics offense has been great there. And specifically, KP is their number 1 clutch scorer and Derek White is their number 3 clutch scorer. So they just have more dudes this year who you can lean on in those settings. And I do think that Jayson Tatum has improved. And there may be nothing on the raw stat sheet that reflects that, but the one complaint that I've most consistently had about his game is that predictability and the reliance on the pull-up threes in the postseason, and how his game can sort of fade away if those shots just aren't falling. He has really increased his post-up volume this year, and he has been awesome in those spots. He's averaging 1.2 points per post-up. So he's been more physical in those situations, and we're seeing more shot variety from him, more comfort attacking from the mid-range. So the Celtics just look better across the board to me. Really, my only concerns are big depth if KP goes down, because we know that he is a historically very injury-prone player. And I guess I would say that consistent crunch time offense and the ability still potentially to fall into those lulls, but I am far less concerned about that this year than last year. It's just still a difference maker when I compare them to, for example, Denver. And I do think that Denver has the more reliably great offense because they have the best player on the floor, because he is always going to generate those high quality looks around the rim and in the paint. And they also have this elite shooting. But Boston is a phenomenal basketball team.
Yeah, there's less variance with what Denver does. I think that's what makes them a bit of a safer bet. And again, when we're talking about flaws with Boston, it's important to mention that like there's a big drop off after this point, in my opinion. And so that means like when we're discussing flaws, it's all relative to the field. I think there's a lot of like specific things that they're better at than I expected. Tatum just being way bigger than he was last year has helped a lot. You talked about the leaning more on the post-up attack as a method of just generating higher quality shots around the rim. Big shock, Kristaps Porzingis fit ended up being perfect. They're leaning more into Derek White as an initiator. That's been kind of like their counter to some of Tatum's decision-making stuff, is like have him set ball screens for Derek White and kind of see if they can get some stuff out of that. The shooting variance thing is interesting because, like, first of all, there's a lot more highs than lows on that front.
Yeah.
I don't think people realize just how crazy that stat Logan threw out was. Like, think about that. Over a 3-game stretch, they outscored their opponent by more than 100 points from the 3-point line. Like that's absolutely insane, right? Like that's a completely insane stat. That said, I do think we're underplaying the Tatum pull-up shooting thing a little bit. He's in a red hot stretch right now. He's 22 for his last 45 over the Celtics' last 10 games, which is like almost 1.5 per shot. So like really, really useful there. But it's very clear that Tatum's leaning into it. Like he's hunting the pull-up three. That is what he wants to take. The dead giveaway to me was he got Karl Towns on a switch at the end of the Minnesota Timberwolves game and had space to operate and looked for and made a move hunting a pull-up three in a game where they were down by 4 in the final minute. So that tells you a lot about Tatum's approach. So last question before we move on from Boston, and I'll start with you, Carson. Like, are you concerned at all about the fact that Tatum seems to be tying a good chunk of his success to whether or not the pull-up three-point shot falls?
Yes, I am. And I don't mean to underplay that concern because I think that has been a fundamental issue with the Boston Celtics. And they have been an extremely talented team. They're even more overwhelmingly talented now. But at the end of the day, I still think they need Jayson Tatum to play at that consistent superstar level over the entirety of a playoff run. And he has had such high highs, but he has also had uncharacteristically low lows for a player of that caliber. Like the meme of how every other game or every 3 games, Jayson Tatum's going to shoot 30% is very real. And it's because of that heavy reliance on pull-up threes, where over the last couple seasons, he's on a tear right now, but he hasn't that reliably been a very efficient pull-up 3-point shooter, and he wasn't in the playoff run last year. So yes, I do think that can bite them. And if I had more confidence in Tatum, like just consistently attacking from all over the floor, not falling into that over-reliance on the pull-up three, maybe Boston would be my title favorite. But it is the little things like that still hold them back when I compare them to such a reliable juggernaut like Denver.
It is the little things like that. And for example, I mean, when he's in these lulls too, Tatum has the tendency to keep trying to shoot himself out of the lull. You know what I mean? In those late game situations, I just think the more easy offense is a kick down to the low block. Tatum literally just driving and trying to get downhill and get the ball to touch the paint to collapse the defense. I know, Carson, and I agree with a lot of what you said with White, with Porzingis, with Tatum playing better and being more dynamic. That is still my chief concern about the Boston Celtics. I don't know how it can't be. Like, they're going to give the rock to Tatum, and it is on his shoulders to close out games when it comes playoff time. That's still my biggest red flag about Boston and why I can't put them over Denver.
To Carson's point, there have been 8 games this season when Tatum shot below 40% from the field. As a point of comparison, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has only had 3 such games. So that goes to show you just some of the variance as it pertains to the types of shots that Jayson Tatum takes and how that can lead him to have some really, really rough nights.